At a billionaire CEO's glamorous wedding in New York, a beautiful maid crashes the ceremony, declaring she's pregnant with the CEO's child. The man, known for his cold ego and a perfect public image, denies everything, ashamed of the scandal it could cause. But the maid's pain is raw and real, and the truth threatens to unravel the powerful man's life, exposing secrets, lies, heartbreak, and redemption. The grand ballroom of the Sterling Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers and golden accents. Hundreds of the city's elite had gathered for the wedding of Victor Sterling, one of America's most powerful billionaires, to Alexandra Monroe, a glamorous socialite. Cameras flashed, laughter echoed, and champagne glasses clinked in celebration. Victor Sterling, handsome, sharply dressed in a tailored tuxedo, smiled confidently as he held Alexandra's hand. They were the perfect couple, wealthy, poised, and admired by all. The air was filled with excitement and anticipation for the start of their new life together. But no one expected what was about to happen. Suddenly, the double doors at the back of the hall burst open. All eyes turned. A young woman, dressed in a simple maid's uniform, her hair messy and eyes fierce with determination, strode into the room. Her voice rang out, cutting through the music and chatter. "I'm pregnant, with Victor Sterling's baby." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The music stopped abruptly. The guests froze, their eyes wide with shock. Victor's smile faltered. Alexandra's face twisted in rage. The maid stood tall, tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice shaking but loud. "You all know him as the billionaire CEO, the man of honor. But behind closed doors, he denies me, denies our child. I'm here to say the truth." Security rushed toward her, but she held up a hand. "I won't be silenced." In that moment, the facade of luxury shattered. The perfect wedding turned into a spectacle of scandal. Victor clenched his jaw. His ego and pride warred within him. Alexandra stepped forward, fury blazing in her eyes. "This is a lie. Get her out of here!" she shouted. The maid was pulled away, but her words lingered like a storm. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who was this woman? Could it be true? 6 months earlier, Victor Sterling sat alone in his penthouse apartment, nursing a glass of whiskey. The night had been long and draining, another argument with Alexandra over his late nights and secretive phone calls. The weight of expectation pressed down on him. Into the room walked Maya, the maid, a young woman from a humble background. She quietly cleaned the cluttered living room, careful not to disturb him. Victor's anger flared. "Can't you ever just do your job without sticking your nose in?" Maya flinched but didn't respond. Later, drunk and frustrated, Victor stumbled toward her. Something in her calm gaze stopped him. Before he knew it, their worlds collided in a night that changed everything. Back at the wedding, Victor's mind raced. He wanted to deny it all, to preserve his image. But Maya's words echoed inside him, stirring feelings he thought he had buried. The guests whispered, cameras clicked, and a storm was coming. The city never really slept, but that night, Victor Sterling felt like his world was collapsing. It started with a fight. Victor sat in his sleek office, the skyline glowing behind him. His phone buzzed again. It was Alexandra. She was angry, frustrated, accusing him of hiding things. The words cut deeper than he wanted to admit. "Why do you always shut me out?" Alexandra's voice was sharp. Victor ran a hand through his hair. "I'm just busy. This company, it's everything. You're busy with other women, aren't you?" Alexandra's voice trembled with suspicion. Victor slammed the phone down, his breath quickening. He stormed out of the office and headed home. Maya was there, cleaning quietly as always. He barely noticed her at first, but the tension in his chest grew heavier. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, feeling the burn as he drank. The pain inside was different from the alcohol. It was loneliness, frustration, regret. Maya moved to leave, but Victor called out, "Wait." She looked at him with cautious eyes. Victor hesitated. Then, against all reason, he said, "Stay." The moment felt fragile, as if the entire world was holding its breath. He reached out, his hand brushing her hair away from her face. Maya's eyes were wide, searching, uncertain. One thing led to another. Their barriers broke. In the quiet darkness, Two people from different worlds shared a night neither expected. Morning came too soon. Victor woke up with a pounding headache and a heart full of regret. Maya was already gone, leaving behind only a note. "I'm sorry. I didn't want this to happen." Victor read the note over and over, his mind spinning. He told himself it was a mistake. A one-time thing. He could forget it. But Maya couldn't. Weeks passed. Maya's body changed. She felt tired all the time, and when she finally took a test, the two pink lines stared back at her. Pregnant. The news hit her like a thunderbolt. She tried calling Victor, but he ignored her. She wrote letters, sent messages, all unanswered. Her life was now a storm of fear, hope, and loneliness. Victor continued with his life, pushing the truth to the back of his mind. But the secret grew inside Maya, a life he couldn't deny forever. Back at the wedding, Maya's brave act to reveal the truth was just the beginning of a battle between love, pride, and destiny. The morning after the wedding, the city was abuzz with a scandal no one wanted to talk about, yet everyone was whispering. Victor Sterling woke up in his sleek Manhattan penthouse, the cold light filtering through the tall glass windows. His head throbbed from last night's tension and the sharp sting of alcohol. Beside him, the bed was empty, the sheets still warm from the absence of sleep. His phone buzzed repeatedly, a message from his assistant, press clippings flooding in, legal warnings, and most haunting of all, a text from Maya. "Victor, please. We need to talk. I'm pregnant." Victor stared at the message, his fingers trembling. He could feel a cold rush through his veins, a mixture of fear and disbelief. He wanted to delete it, erase the night, deny it all, but he couldn't stop reading. The words echoed in his mind. Pregnant. The responsibility, the shame, the consequences. He threw the phone on the bed and stood up, pacing the floor. How did it come to this? He muttered. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya sat alone in her small, dimly lit apartment. The pregnancy test was on the table, the two bright lines mocking her, confirming the life growing inside her. She held her belly, trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. How will I survive? What will Victor say? Will he even care? She picked up her phone and dialed Victor's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Please answer. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking. Days passed. Maya's messages were ignored. The calls unanswered. Her world shrank as fear and rejection closed in. Victor had already begun his defense. In the Sterling Industries boardroom, his legal team gathered. The air was thick with tension. "Mr. Sterling, we advise a full denial," said his top lawyer, Mr. Hawkins, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s. "This woman is a threat to your reputation and the company's stock. We recommend discrediting her immediately." Victor nodded, swallowing his pride. "Do whatever it takes. This can't get out." His PR team was swift. A press release was drafted, calling the rumors baseless and defamatory. Agents contacted tabloids to plant stories about Maya's questionable character. Maya felt the backlash almost instantly. Her phone was flooded with hateful messages. "Gold digger! Liar! Get an abortion!" Her landlord called, threatening eviction for missed rent. Her best friend stopped returning calls. The loneliness was suffocating. One afternoon, Maya met with Sarah, her lawyer. Sarah was tough, a woman who had fought many battles for women like Maya. "You're not alone," Sarah said firmly. "Victor Sterling's power won't silence you." Maya wiped tears, determination hardening in her eyes. "I want him to take responsibility. For the baby. For me." Sarah nodded. "Then we fight." Back in his penthouse, Victor stared at the ultrasound image Maya had sent, a tiny heartbeat captured in black and white. He felt torn between his ego and an unknown tenderness he tried to deny. That night, alone, he whispered, "What have I done?" Victor sat rigid in his leather chair, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. The headlines were merciless. Billionaire's baby scandal, the Maid's shocking claim. Victor Sterling's secret exposed. What's next? Asterisk, is Sterling's empire at risk? His phone buzzed again. Another call from Alexandra. "Victor, we need to talk," she said, voice cold and sharp. He hesitated but answered. "Alexandra, please don't make this harder than it is." She laughed bitterly. "Harder? You think this is easy for me? You think I'm just going to watch you destroy everything we built? Victor clenched his jaw. I never wanted this. Didn't want it. You ruined me with your lies and your selfishness. You made your choice. Alexandra, I never meant to hurt you. But her words cut deeper. Then fix it. Prove it. Meanwhile, Maya's life was a series of battles. The small apartment she shared with 2 other tenants felt suffocating. Every day brought new challenges. At work, her boss called her in. I'm sorry, Maya, but the rumors, they're bad for business. You're fired. She packed her things quietly, heart heavy but spirit unbroken. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Victor's lawyer demanding silence. I will not be silenced, Maya typed back fiercely. She reached out to her best friend, but the silence was deafening. The loneliness wrapped around her like a shroud. One rainy evening, Maya sat curled on the couch, staring at her growing belly. She whispered, I'm scared. But I will fight. For my baby. For myself. Her phone rang. Sarah's voice came through, steady and strong. We have a meeting with the press next week. Time to tell your story. Maya took a deep breath. I'm ready. Victor paced in his penthouse, phone in hand. He dialed Maya's number but hung up before she answered. The truth was a weight crushing him. He was trapped between protecting his empire and doing what was right. The battle lines were drawn. Victor's denial clashed with Maya's courage. Rejection met resilience. And in the storm of scandal, one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after the wedding, the city was abuzz with a scandal no one wanted to talk about, yet everyone was whispering. Victor Sterling woke up in his sleek Manhattan penthouse, the cold light filtering through the tall glass windows. His head throbbed from last night's tension and the sharp sting of alcohol. Beside him, the bed was empty, the sheets still warm from the absence of sleep. His phone buzzed repeatedly, a message from his assistant, press clippings flooding in, legal warnings, and most haunting of all, a text from Maya. Victor, please. We need to talk. I'm pregnant. Victor stared at the message, his fingers trembling. He could feel a cold rush through his veins, a mixture of fear and disbelief. He wanted to delete it, erase the night, deny it all, but he couldn't stop reading. The words echoed in his mind. Pregnant. The responsibility, the shame, the consequences. He threw the phone on the bed and stood up, pacing the floor. How did it come to this? He muttered. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya sat alone in her small, dimly lit apartment. The pregnancy test was on the table, the 2 bright lines mocking her, confirming the life growing inside her. She held her belly, trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. How will I survive? What will Victor say? Will he even care? She picked up her phone and dialed Victor's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Please answer. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking. Days passed. Maya's messages were ignored. The calls unanswered. Her world shrank as fear and rejection closed in. Victor had already begun his defense. In the Sterling Industries boardroom, his legal team gathered. The air was thick with tension. Mr. Sterling, we advise a full denial, said his top lawyer, Mr. Hawkins, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s. This woman is a threat to your reputation and the company's stock. We recommend discrediting her immediately. Victor nodded, swallowing his pride. Do whatever it takes. This can't get out. His PR team was swift. A press release was drafted, calling the rumors baseless and defamatory. Agents contacted tabloids to plant stories about Maya's questionable character. Maya felt the backlash almost instantly. Her phone was flooded with hateful messages. Gold digger. Liar. Get an abortion. Her landlord called, threatening eviction for missed rent. Her best friend stopped returning calls. The loneliness was suffocating. One afternoon, Maya met with Sarah, her lawyer. Sarah was tough, a woman who had fought many battles for women like Maya. You're not alone, Sarah said firmly. Victor Sterling's power won't silence you. Maya wiped tears, determination hardening in her eyes. I want him to take responsibility. For the baby. For me. Sarah nodded. Then we fight. Back in his penthouse, Victor stared at the ultrasound image Maya had sent, a tiny heartbeat captured in black and white. He felt torn between his ego and an unknown tenderness he tried to deny. That night, alone, he whispered, "What have I done?" Victor sat rigid in his leather chair, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. The headlines were merciless. Billionaire's baby scandal, the Maid's shocking claim. Victor Sterling's secret exposed, what's next? Asterisk, is Sterling's empire at risk? His phone buzzed again. Another call from Alexandra. "Victor, we need to talk," she said, voice cold and sharp. He hesitated but answered. "Alexandra, please don't make this harder than it is." She laughed bitterly. "Harder? You think this is easy for me? You think I'm just going to watch you destroy everything we built?" Victor clenched his jaw. "I never wanted this. Didn't want it. You ruined me with your lies and your selfishness. You made your choice. Alexandra, I never meant to hurt you." But her words cut deeper. "Then fix it. Prove it." Meanwhile, Maya's life was a series of battles. The small apartment she shared with 2 other tenants felt suffocating. Every day brought new challenges. At work, her boss called her in. "I'm sorry, Maya, but the rumors, they're bad for business. You're fired." She packed her things quietly, heart heavy but spirit unbroken. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Victor's lawyer demanding silence. "I will not be silenced," Maya typed back fiercely. She reached out to her best friend, but the silence was deafening. The loneliness wrapped around her like a shroud. One rainy evening, Maya sat curled on the couch, staring at her growing belly. She whispered, "I'm scared. But I will fight. For my baby. For myself." Her phone rang. Sarah's voice came through, steady and strong. "We have a meeting with the press next week. Time to tell your story." Maya took a deep breath. "I'm ready." Victor paced in his penthouse, phone in hand. He dialed Maya's number but hung up before she answered. The truth was a weight crushing him. He was trapped between protecting his empire and doing what was right. The battle lines were drawn. Victor's denial clashed with Maya's courage. Rejection met resilience. And in the storm of scandal, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with reporters, legal aides, and onlookers drawn by the scandal that gripped the city. Maya sat beside Sarah, her heart pounding as the judge called the court to order. Victor Sterling entered with his legal team, his expression guarded but tense. The man who had once seemed untouchable now looked vulnerable under the intense scrutiny. Sarah rose confidently to address the court. "Your Honor, we are here to establish a father's responsibility not just legally, but morally. Maya's child deserves recognition, support, and love." Victor's lawyer, a sharp woman named Miss Caldwell, stood to respond. "This case is built on lies and opportunism. Mr. Sterling denies any paternity, and we will provide evidence to disprove these baseless claims." The judge nodded. "Very well. We will begin with the presentation of evidence." Sarah called Maya to the stand. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she spoke about the night that changed everything, the months of isolation and fear, and her hope for justice. Her words were raw and sincere, drawing sympathetic glances from the audience. Victor watched quietly, the weight of Maya's testimony pressing against his defenses. He clenched his fists as Sarah produced the first pieces of evidence, medical reports, texts, and the ultrasound images. Mississippi Caldwell countered with questions designed to undermine Maya's credibility. "Miss, how do we know you aren't fabricating this story for financial gain?" Maya's voice was steady but firm. "Because it's not about money. It's about my child's future. I want Victor to be a father." Outside the courtroom, the media frenzy grew. Headlines shifted from scandalous accusations to stories of Maya's courage and resilience. Social media exploded with support hashtags like #JusticeForMaya and #ChildDeservesLove. Victor's carefully constructed world began to crack. Board members expressed concern over the company's image. Alexandra, watching from the sidelines, plotted her next move with cold calculation. Late at night, Victor called Sarah unexpectedly. "I want to know more about Maya's story," he said quietly. Sarah was surprised. "Why now?" Victor hesitated. "Because this This is bigger than me. Meanwhile, Maya struggled with exhaustion and the fear of the unknown. One night, overwhelmed by emotion, she confided in Rosa. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," she whispered. Rosa held her hands. "You are stronger than you think. This fight is for you and your baby." The courtroom battles raged on, each day bringing new challenges, new revelations. But Maya's spirit remained unbroken. And Victor's heart was slowly beginning to change. Weeks turned into months. The courtroom became Maya's second home, a place where her courage was tested every day. Victor watched from his glass office, torn between denial and the growing reality that he could no longer run from his responsibilities. Each day the case progressed, his pride battled his conscience. One afternoon, Alexandra, dressed impeccably in designer black, stormed into Victor's office. "This nonsense has gone too far," she hissed. "If you don't end this now, your empire will crumble." Victor looked away, weary. "I can't just erase her," he said quietly. "It's not that simple." Alexandra's eyes burned. "Then you're weak. Just like you always were." Meanwhile, Maya prepared for another hearing. The stress weighed on her heavily, the late nights, the endless questioning, the constant judgment. Her baby was growing inside her, a tiny heartbeat against the storm. She called Rosa one evening, tears streaming. "I'm so tired. I don't know if I can keep fighting." Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going." Victor's heart softened in unexpected ways. He began secretly following Maya's progress, reading articles about her strength and the growing public support she inspired. One night, alone and exhausted, Victor whispered to himself, "I want to do right by her, by my child." The next hearing was a turning point. DNA tests were finally presented, confirming what many already suspected: Maya's child was Victor's. The courtroom gasped. Victor's lawyer sat speechless. Even Alexandra looked shocked. Maya felt a surge of relief and fear, relief that the truth was undeniable, fear of what would come next. The judge ruled in Maya's favor, ordering Victor to begin child support and visitation discussions. Victor sat back, a mixture of defeat and hope in his eyes. Outside, the media erupted. Maya's fight was no longer just a personal battle, it was a story of justice, courage, and change. Social media was flooded with messages supporting Maya and urging Victor to be a responsible father. Victor reached out to Maya for the first time in months. His message was simple: "I want to talk." Maya stared at her phone, heart pounding. Could he really mean it? The fight was far from over, but a fragile bridge had begun to form between two worlds. And with it, the promise of healing. The morning after the judge's ruling, New York's newspapers screamed with headlines that echoed far beyond the city's skyscrapers. Billionaire father revealed. Victor Sterling forced to acknowledge Maid's child. Maya's victory. A mother's courage shakes Sterling empire. From scandal to support, public rallies behind Maya. Every major news network carried the story, the scandal no longer a secret but a nationwide conversation. Maya sat in her modest apartment, the sunlight catching the tears that streamed down her face as she watched the news. For months, she had fought in the shadows, but now the world was watching. Some cheered her courage, others threw stones. Her phone buzzed constantly, reporters wanting interviews, strangers sending words of encouragement, and, inevitably, critics and trolls lashing out. Her phone rang. It was Sarah. "They want you at a morning talk show. This is your moment." Maya hesitated. "What if I'm not ready?" Sarah's voice was firm. "You're stronger than you think." At the studio, bright lights and buzzing cameras surrounded her. The host, a sharp but empathetic woman, welcomed Maya. "You've become a symbol of strength and resilience. What do you want people to know?" Maya took a deep breath. "That every child deserves love and a father who takes responsibility. And that no one should be afraid to fight for their truth." Her words struck a chord with viewers across the country. Meanwhile, Victor's world spiraled. Shareholders demanded answers. The board held emergency meetings. His carefully cultivated image lay in tatters. At a tense board meeting, Victor faced cold stares and pointed questions. "We can't afford this scandal," one executive said. "Our stock is plummeting. What's the plan?" Victor's jaw tightened. We face the truth and take responsibility." The room erupted in murmurs. Alexandra's voice echoed through Victor's phone one night. "This is your mess. Clean it up." Victor replied quietly, "I'm trying." The media frenzy showed no sign of slowing. Tabloids published every detail, often twisted for sensation. The city's social circles buzzed with gossip. Victor became a figure both pitied and condemned. Maya found solace in unexpected places, a community of women who had endured similar battles, rallying together with love and support. One afternoon, Rosa brought a box of donated baby clothes. "We've got your back," Rosa said, hugging Maya tightly. Victor, despite the chaos, felt a new sense of purpose. He began private meetings with counselors, seeking to understand what kind of father he wanted to be. The fight between denial and acceptance, scandal and responsibility, pride and love played out on the world stage. And for Maya and Victor, the battle was only just beginning. The days following Maya's interview on the morning show unfolded like a whirlwind. Her story spread across social media like wildfire. Supporters flooded her accounts with messages of encouragement, calls for justice, and personal testimonies of similar struggles. Hashtags like #MayaStrong and #BillionaireDad trend flooded Twitter feeds. Yet, amid the sea of support, bitter critics and trolls lurked, sending hateful messages and attempting to undermine her character. Maya's phone never stopped ringing. Each ring was a reminder: the world was watching, and the stakes had never been higher. One evening, exhausted from the relentless scrutiny, Maya sat on the worn sofa in her apartment, her hands cradling her growing belly. Rosa sat beside her, holding a steaming cup of tea. "Maya," Rosa said gently, "you need to take care of yourself. This fight isn't just about the courts or the media, it's about you and your baby's future." Maya nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough." Rosa squeezed her hand. "You are. And you're not alone." Meanwhile, Victor's life was anything but calm. The Sterling Industries boardroom had transformed into a war zone. Executives and lawyers debated fiercely over damage control and public relations strategies. Victor's longtime PR consultant, Monica, laid out a new plan. "We have to get ahead of this narrative. Victor needs to be seen as a responsible father and businessman. We'll arrange charity appearances, family-oriented press conferences, the works." Victor looked drained but resolute. "I want to do what's right," he said quietly. Monica gave a small, hopeful smile. "That's where we start." Despite the controlled messaging, the media caught wind of private moments between Victor and Maya. Paparazzi photos showed Victor visiting Maya's apartment under the cover of darkness, fueling wild speculation. Tabloids ran headlines like, "Billionaire visits baby mama, is a reconciliation possible?" and Victor Sterling's secret meetings. The public's fascination only grew. Victor wrestled with his own demons. One night, alone in his office, he stared at the ultrasound photo once again. The tiny hands, the flicker of life, they stirred a tenderness he hadn't expected. He whispered to himself, "I can't fail this child." Back home, Maya prepared for a televised court hearing. The pressure was immense, but she steeled herself. Before entering the courtroom, she looked up at the sky and silently vowed, "For you, my child, I will fight." As cameras rolled, the courtroom buzzed with tension. The judge addressed the court, ready to hear final arguments on custody and support. Victor sat beside his legal team, visibly more vulnerable than ever. Sarah stood, voice steady and passionate. "This is not just a case of money or scandal. It's about a child's right to love, care, and a family." Maya's eyes met Victor's for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement of the complex journey ahead. The media storm continued to rage outside the courthouse doors, a cacophony of opinions, debates, and speculation. Both Maya and Victor understood this was more than a personal battle, it was a public reckoning. The courtroom was thick with tension. Cameras and reporters filled the back rows, their eager eyes fixed on the proceedings. Maya sat beside Sarah, her hands folded tightly in her lap, the weight of months of struggle pressing down on her. Victor entered the room, eyes downcast but face composed. The man who once seemed invincible now carried the burden of undeniable truth. The judge cleared his throat and addressed the court. "We will now hear final arguments regarding custody, visitation rights, and child support obligations." Sarah stood first, her voice unwavering. "Your Honor, Maya has fought not just for herself, but for the rights of her unborn child. This child deserves a father present not only in name but in action. We ask that Victor Sterling accept his responsibilities fully." Victor's lawyer rose next, softer in tone but firm. "Mr. Sterling acknowledges his child and is prepared to provide support. However, we request that visitation rights be scheduled with consideration for Mr. Sterling's business obligations and privacy concerns." The courtroom murmured. Maya's eyes searched Victor's face. There was a flicker of remorse, perhaps even hope. Outside, the media frenzy continued unabated. News anchors debated Victor's sincerity, while social media users voiced passionate opinions. Some praised Victor's eventual acceptance, others condemned his previous denials. That evening, Victor sat alone, reflecting on the path ahead. He reached out to Sarah, Maya's lawyer. "I want to propose mediation," he said quietly. "For the sake of the child." Sarah was surprised but agreed. Maya was cautious but agreed to the mediation. The sessions were difficult, raw emotions, past wounds, and fragile hopes intertwined. Yet, slowly, a tentative understanding began to form. Victor began to visit Maya's apartment more frequently, bringing gifts and talking gently about the future. Maya was guarded but recognized the sincerity. Their relationship was complicated, marked by pain and the possibility of forgiveness. Meanwhile, Alexandra watched from afar, her jealousy and bitterness simmering. She planned to use every opportunity to disrupt this fragile peace. The media caught wind of Victor and Maya's meetings. Headlines shifted again, from scandal to co-parenting. Victor Sterling's redemption. Maya found strength in the public support and her growing connection with Victor, a connection complicated but full of promise. As the media storm raged, both parents faced their greatest challenge yet, building a future for their child amid the ruins of their past. Alexandra sat in her sleek apartment overlooking the city skyline, her fingers tapping impatiently on the glass of champagne. The news of Victor's growing involvement with Maya had sent shockwaves through her carefully curated world. She scrolled through social media, reading comments praising Victor's redemption and Maya's strength. The words stung. She had invested years in building an image, a life with Victor, and now it was crumbling. Determined, she picked up her phone and called her most trusted PR strategist. "We need to disrupt their narrative," Alexandra said coldly. "Make sure the public remembers who Victor really is and who Maya really is not." The next day, rumors began to spread. Anonymous sources whispered about Maya's past mistakes, attempts to paint her as unstable, unfit, and opportunistic. Tabloids ran exposés filled with half-truths and innuendos. Maya's phone exploded with hateful messages once again, the backlash threatening to overwhelm her newfound support. Victor was furious. He confronted Alexandra in a tense boardroom meeting. "This has to stop," he warned. "You're hurting everyone, especially the baby." Alexandra's smile was icy. "I'm protecting my future." Victor's eyes flashed. "Our child deserves better than this war." Meanwhile, Maya found solace in her friends and supporters. One afternoon, Rosa gathered a group of women to stand with Maya publicly. "We won't be silenced by lies," Rosa declared. "We stand with Maya and every woman fighting for justice." A rally was organized outside Sterling Industries, drawing crowds and media attention. The media frenzy intensified. News anchors debated fiercely, some condemning Alexandra's tactics, others questioning Victor's sincerity. Social media campaigns flooded the internet with messages of support and calls for fairness. Victor, feeling the pressure mounting, agreed to a public statement. In a televised interview, he spoke candidly about his mistakes, his responsibilities, and his hopes for the future. His words were met with mixed reactions. Some praised his honesty, others remained skeptical. Maya watched the interview from her apartment, heart pounding. For the first time, she felt a fragile sense of hope that perhaps this storm could bring change, not just scandal. But Alexandra was not finished. She began legal maneuvers to challenge Victor's custody and visitation plans, complicating the path forward. The battle between the three adults became a public spectacle, messy, emotional, and far from over. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Alexandra's legal team filed a motion to challenge Victor's custody arrangements. Their argument: Maya was unfit, overwhelmed by public scrutiny, and lacked the stability to raise a child associated with a high-profile family. Victor sat quietly, torn. Alexandra's relentless attacks were tearing everyone apart, including himself. He glanced at Maya, who sat composed despite the storm swirling around her. Sarah, Maya's lawyer, prepared a fierce defense. She gathered testimonies from Maya's community supporters, medical professionals, and character witnesses, all affirming Maya's strength, integrity, and readiness to be a mother. At the hearing, Sarah spoke passionately. Maya's commitment to her child is unwavering. Attempts to malign her character are nothing more than tactics to deny her rightful place. Alexandra's lawyer countered with cold precision. The court must consider the best interests of the child, which include stability, privacy, and protection from public chaos. The judge listened intently, weighing the arguments with a solemn gaze. Outside the courthouse, supporters of both sides gathered. Protesters waving signs clashed with paparazzi and bystanders, turning the scene into a chaotic spectacle. Victor found himself in the eye of the storm, balancing corporate pressures, public opinion, and the increasingly fractured relationships. One evening, he met privately with Alexandra. "This has to end," he said firmly. "For the child's sake, for all of us." Alexandra's eyes flashed with defiance. "This isn't over." Meanwhile, Maya leaned on her growing network of friends and allies. Rosa organized support groups, counseling sessions, and public forums to empower mothers in similar battles. Maya herself spoke at several events, her voice steady and inspiring. The media covered every twist and turn. Opinion pieces debated Victor's redemption, Alexandra's motives, and Maya's resilience. Public sentiment began to shift. Many admired Maya's courage and called for respect and compassion. Victor made a bold decision. He invited Maya to a televised joint interview, a public step toward healing and co-parenting. The interview was tense but hopeful. They acknowledged their past mistakes, their commitment to the child, and their desire to build a new future. Alexandra watched the interview, fury burning inside her. She knew the fight was far from over. As the media storm raged, Maya and Victor found moments of fragile peace, a foundation amid the chaos. The battle was ongoing, but the promise of a new beginning flickered brightly. The following weeks brought both relief and strain. The public's opinion of Victor had slowly started to shift in a more positive direction. His vulnerability in the joint interview with Maya had humanized him in the eyes of many. He wasn't just the cold billionaire CEO anymore. He was a father, a man trying to right his wrongs. Maya, too, had become a symbol of strength. Her story of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds resonated deeply with people across the country. Support groups dedicated to single mothers and women's rights saw a surge in participation, many of them inspired by Maya's unwavering determination. But even as the public pressure began to lift slightly, the emotional toll on Maya remained. Late one night, after yet another long day of interviews and meetings, Maya sat alone in her apartment. The weight of the past months still pressed heavily on her chest. She touched her belly softly, her eyes distant. "What will the world look like for you?" she whispered. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Victor. "I'm proud of you. You're stronger than I ever realized." Maya stared at the screen, conflicted. There was sincerity in his words, but also a lingering sense of uncertainty. She had fought so hard to prove herself, to protect her child, and the idea of letting someone into that space, especially someone who had once denied her, was terrifying. "Still," she responded, "we're in this together, for the child. That's all that matters right now." Meanwhile, Victor sat in his penthouse, staring at his phone. Maya's response was measured, controlled, a reminder that they were not yet close, despite the progress they had made. He had to accept that things wouldn't be easy. The love and trust he had once taken for granted with Alexandra would never be rebuilt overnight with Maya. But he was willing to try. For the child. For what was right. Alexandra, watching from her corner of the world, refused to let go of her influence over Victor. Despite the public support for Maya, she believed Victor's decision to publicly acknowledge the child was a mistake. She had planned for a life with him, and the revelation of a child from his past disrupted everything. She watched the news with a mixture of bitterness and calculation. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next step in their journey came when Victor and Maya were ordered to sit down with a family mediator to discuss custody arrangements. The press had been clamoring for any new developments, and the pressure was immense. On the day of the mediation, Maya stood tall as she entered the room, her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. She had seen the stories, read the critiques, and felt the weight of judgment from the public and from her own family. Victor was already there, sitting at the table. His suit was crisp, his demeanor calm. But his eyes betrayed the tension inside him. He had come a long way from the man who had once denied his responsibilities, but this was the hardest part, accepting that he could no longer run from the consequences of his actions. The mediator, a kind but firm woman named Emily, led the session. "We're here today to focus on the child's well-being," Emily said, her voice soothing yet authoritative. "What do you both want moving forward?" Victor spoke first. "I want to be a part of my child's life. I want to be a father. I want to support Maya and ensure that we can co-parent peacefully for the sake of the child." Maya nodded, her voice steady. "I don't want conflict. I want my child to grow up knowing love and stability. I've fought for this child's future, and I will continue to do so. But I need Victor's commitment." They spent the next few hours discussing arrangements for visitation, financial support, and shared custody. Victor agreed to provide an open line of communication with Maya, understanding that his child would need stability and unconditional love from both parents. As the session ended, Maya and Victor stood together, facing the beginning of a new chapter. They had reached a tentative agreement, one that would require constant effort and patience from both of them. But for the first time, Maya allowed herself to believe that this would work. She turned to Victor, her voice soft but firm. "For the child's sake, we do this right." Victor met her gaze, a sense of determination in his eyes. "We will." The next morning, the media picked up the story. "Billionaire father Victor Sterling steps up to co-parent with Maya" was the headline that filled newsstands across the city. Public opinion shifted again, with many applauding the efforts of both parents to put their differences aside and focus on what mattered most, their child. Maya sat quietly at home, watching the coverage with a bittersweet smile. This was the calm after the storm. The storm that had tested her, pushed her beyond limits, and left scars that would never fully heal. But as she touched her belly once again, she knew that every step of this journey had been worth it. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future without constant fear. A future where she, Victor, and their child could find some semblance of peace. Victor, too, began to imagine that future. He stood by his office window, looking out over the city. His empire was in chaos, but for the first time, he felt like he was building something meaningful. Something real. It was a long road ahead, filled with challenges and doubts, but one thing was certain, he would never make the same mistake again. His child, Maya, and their future together were worth every sacrifice. It had been weeks since the media storm had settled, but the ripples still touched every part of their lives. The court's final decision on custody had been made. Victor and Maya were officially co-parents, with joint custody agreed upon, and a structured visitation schedule in place. But this new arrangement brought challenges neither had anticipated. They were learning to navigate the delicate balance between their shared responsibility for the child and the deep history of misunderstanding, denial, and pain that had preceded it. Maya stood in her apartment one chilly evening, looking out at the skyline. The city that once felt so vast and overwhelming now felt oddly comforting. The lights flickered in the distance as if signaling the start of a new chapter, one she hoped would be filled with stability and peace. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced down at the message. It was from Victor. "Are we still on for the weekend? It's your turn for the visitation." Maya smiled softly. They had been sharing the weekend custody every 2 weeks since their agreement. She had her reservations, but over time, the interactions had become more natural. The tension between them had diminished, but it still lingered in the quiet moments. She typed back quickly. "Yes, of course. I'll have everything ready. See you on Saturday." The thought of seeing Victor again still stirred something within her, something she couldn't quite define. They were doing this for the child, that was what she kept telling herself. It wasn't about them. It wasn't about past mistakes or betrayal. But some days, the weight of everything, the hurt, the disappointment, crept up on her. She couldn't deny the bond that still existed between them. The same bond that had once led to so much heartache. But now, it was about their child, and nothing else. And she could live with that. The weekend arrived. Victor arrived at Maya's apartment exactly on time, dressed in a sharp jacket and slacks, his usual polished self. Yet there was something different about him today, a vulnerability he couldn't seem to hide. He had been spending more time with his child, taking it slow, trying to build a connection that had been lost for so long. Maya opened the door and greeted him with a nod. "You're early." Victor smiled slightly, adjusting his jacket. "I know. I thought I'd take a walk with you before we get to it. Just to talk." Maya looked at him warily. She didn't know how much she wanted to get into the past. But she had to admit that there was something in his eyes that seemed genuine. The kind of honesty she hadn't seen before. She stepped back, gesturing for him to come in. "All right. We can walk." The two of them walked side by side, the cool breeze of early spring rustling the leaves in the nearby park. The child stroller sat in the back of Victor's car, ready for the afternoon outing. "I've been thinking about a lot," Victor said, his voice quieter than usual. "I know I messed up. I've done everything I could to fix it, but I know that doesn't fix everything. I just want you to know. I'm sorry." Maya stopped walking for a moment, her eyes softening as she looked at him. The apology was long overdue, but it didn't erase the past. Still, she appreciated hearing it. "You can't undo what's been done, Victor," she said softly. "I'm not going to pretend that this hasn't been hard on me. But I do believe you're trying now. And that's all I can ask for the sake of our child." Victor nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. "I know," he murmured. "I've hurt you, and I can't change that. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the father I should have been. Not just to my child, but to you too." Maya's heart skipped a beat. His words were unexpected, and they carried a weight of sincerity that she hadn't anticipated. She didn't know what to say in response. They had been through so much, and she wasn't sure if it was possible to rebuild what had been lost. But hearing him say that, it made her pause, made her question if there was still a possibility for healing between them, even if it wasn't for themselves, but for their child. They continued walking in silence, the peaceful surroundings offering some solace amidst the turbulent emotions both of them were navigating. Victor and Maya strolled through the park, the sound of distant laughter and the rustling of leaves creating a calm backdrop to their conversation. It was the first time in a long while that they were walking side by side, without the tension that had once defined their every interaction. Victor pushed the stroller gently, his eyes scanning the surroundings, but Maya could sense that his mind was elsewhere, thinking, reflecting. She couldn't help but wonder if he, too, was considering the strange place they had found themselves in. Two people once so estranged, now learning to co-parent, learning to share the responsibility of a child they both loved. "I was thinking," Victor started, breaking the silence between them. "Maybe we should consider moving closer to each other. For the child. I know I can't undo the distance, but if we're going to do this, it might be easier for all of us if we were closer." Maya stopped walking and turned to face him, surprise written all over her face. "Closer? What do you mean? Like, live near each other?" Victor ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture. "Not necessarily live together, but maybe get a place closer to where you live. Or a better space for when the child is with me." Maya paused, her thoughts racing. It was a generous offer, one that showed Victor's commitment to their shared responsibility. But she couldn't deny the hesitation in her chest. The idea of their worlds blending so closely was both comforting and terrifying. "Why are you suggesting this now?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I thought we agreed we'd keep our lives separate." Victor's gaze softened as he looked at her, taking a step closer. "I know, and I understand why you'd feel that way. But I've been thinking about what's best for the child. And right now, what's best is for us to be able to work together without all this distance. I want us to be able to share those moments of watching our child grow, without the fear of stepping on each other's toes." Maya's heart swelled with a mixture of warmth and apprehension. It was a beautiful gesture, one that she hadn't expected, and it showed just how far Victor had come since that first day when he denied their child's existence. "I'm still not sure," Maya confessed, her voice quiet. "We've been through so much. And I don't want to rush anything. Not for us." Victor nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I don't want to rush either." I just thought, maybe it's time for a fresh start. For all of us. They continued walking, each lost in thought. The idea of creating a new chapter, one that didn't involve the constant specter of their past, felt both promising and daunting. It was one thing to share the responsibilities of co-parenting. It was another to imagine blending their lives in such an intimate way. As the day wore on, the park began to empty, the shadows lengthening as evening approached. Victor and Maya found a quiet bench near the pond, the still water reflecting the soft glow of the setting sun. Victor turned to Maya, his expression serious but gentle. I don't expect everything to be fixed overnight. I know it's going to take time. But I do want to try. I don't want to fail our child. Maya studied him for a moment, seeing the raw sincerity in his eyes. She had never expected to be here, talking like this. There was no pretending, no pretense of a perfect family. But the bond between them was evolving, becoming something far more complex, yet real. I never wanted to depend on anyone, Maya said, breaking the silence. And I certainly never thought I'd be standing here, having this conversation with you. But, you've changed. You're trying. And that means something. Victor reached out and gently touched her hand, his voice soft. We're both learning. I know I hurt you. I can't take that away, but I want to do right by you, and by the child. Maya's heart raced in her chest. There was still a part of her that struggled to trust him fully, to believe that the change was permanent. But the tenderness in his voice, the way he was looking at her now, made her wonder if it was possible to rebuild something, if not for them, then for their child. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the pond, and for a moment, the world felt still. Everything had been chaotic, torn apart by scandal and hurt, but here, in this fleeting moment, Maya saw the possibility of something different. A future where she and Victor could coexist peacefully, share the joy and the pain of parenting, and build a life that wasn't defined by their past mistakes. I guess we take it one step at a time, right? Maya said, offering a small but genuine smile. Victor returned the smile, his expression filled with hope. One step at a time. They stayed there for a while longer, talking about simple things, what they hoped for their child, their plans for the coming months, and how they could both move forward. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't an instant fix. But it was progress, and for the first time in a long time, Maya felt that the future didn't look so uncertain. As they parted ways that evening, Maya felt a lightness she hadn't expected. The decision to work together as co-parents, to slowly rebuild their trust, was a difficult one. But it was also the right one. She could see the change in Victor, and while she still had reservations, she had to admit that he was trying. The weeks following Maya and Victor's heart-to-heart in the park unfolded with quiet intensity. Their newfound collaboration as co-parents was still fragile, but there was a sense of mutual understanding beginning to take root. Neither of them had fully healed from the past, but they were making strides. And for their child's sake, that was enough. It was a Saturday morning when Maya received a call from Victor, interrupting the peaceful silence in her apartment. Hey, his voice was calm, but she could tell something was different. Are you free today? I was thinking we could take the baby to the park together. I know it's not perfect, but it's a start. Maya glanced at the clock on her wall. It had been a few weeks since they'd made any plans outside of the regular custody weekends, and the idea of spending time with him, not as a couple, but as parents, made her nervous. I think that's a good idea, she replied, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. We'll meet you at noon. By noon, Maya stood in the small park across from her building, baby stroller in hand, waiting for Victor. The day was sunny, warm enough for light jackets, and everything felt oddly normal. As she glanced at the stroller, her thoughts wandered back to the day she had found out she was pregnant. Her life had changed so drastically in that moment. She never imagined she would be here, walking in the park with the father of her child, a man who had once denied their baby's existence. Victor arrived on time, dressed casually, but his usual businesslike demeanor was replaced with an air of quiet determination. He had come to terms with his new role in their lives, as a father, not just as a billionaire CEO. Hey, Victor greeted her with a soft smile. Ready for our first park outing? Maya nodded. I guess this is a start. The two of them walked side by side, pushing the stroller in silence for a moment before Maya spoke again. You know, I never thought this would happen, she began. You and me, doing something normal together. After everything. Victor's gaze softened. I never thought it would either, he admitted. But I'm here now. And I'm trying to be the person I should have been from the beginning. They spent the next few hours at the park, watching their child giggle and reach out toward the soft breeze. It was a quiet, simple afternoon, something Maya had never expected would feel so fulfilling. Later that evening, after parting ways with a brief, cordial goodbye, Maya found herself reflecting on the day. The idea of co-parenting, of sharing a life for the child's sake, was starting to feel less like an obligation and more like a genuine partnership. She had let herself feel it, a small flicker of hope that things could be different, that the past didn't have to dictate everything. But not everyone was as eager to let go of the past. Alexandra, still bitter over her broken engagement with Victor and the public humiliation, was scheming in the background. It wasn't enough for her to have lost Victor. She was determined to make sure Maya's life was anything but easy. One afternoon, as Maya sat in her apartment organizing baby clothes, she received an unexpected call from a private number. Hello. Maya answered, her voice cautious. Miss Maya Thompson? The voice on the other end was smooth, almost too friendly. This is Donna Harrison. I'm a reporter for the New York Post. I've been looking into some interesting details about your past. Mind if I ask you a few questions? Maya's stomach dropped. I'm not interested in talking to the press, she said firmly, her voice tightening. Oh, but you'll want to hear this, Donna's tone changed. We've got some information here that could make things more complicated for you. Maybe it's time to start talking. Maya slammed the phone down, her heart pounding. She knew what this was, an attempt to drag her name through the mud, to ruin the fragile peace she had started to build. She could already guess who was behind this. Alexandra had never liked being ignored, and now, as things seemed to be falling into place for Maya, she was bound to retaliate. Victor's phone rang that evening as well. Victor, Sarah's voice came through, urgent and sharp. There's a story coming out about Maya. The Post got hold of some details that could ruin her. Victor felt a wave of dread. What details? It's not clear yet, but I'll tell you this, someone's out to get her. And I have a pretty good idea who it is. The following days were a blur of media chaos, just as Victor feared. The story dropped like a bombshell, Maya Thompson's secret past, the truth behind the billionaire's baby mama. The details were murky, filled with half-truths and insinuations. They twisted Maya's life, painting her as a woman hiding secrets, as though she had something to hide about her past. The article questioned her fitness as a mother, her intentions, and even suggested she had known about Victor's wealth when they met, portraying her as someone who had manipulated him from the start. Maya read the article, her hands shaking. It felt like a knife through her heart. Everything she had fought for, her dignity, her child's future, was being turned into a spectacle. She picked up the phone and called Victor. You need to do something. This isn't just an attack on me, it's on our child. Victor was silent for a long moment before responding, his voice steady but filled with anger. I'll fix this. The next few days saw the storm intensify. Victor issued a public statement, denouncing the allegations and emphasizing his support for Maya. He slammed the press for sensationalizing her private life. But it wasn't enough. The damage had been done. The doubts were already in the public's mind, planted by those who wanted to tear them apart. Maya felt it all the weight of public scrutiny, the fear of what it would mean for her child, the sense of helplessness that crept in despite her resolve. Victor came to see her the following day, standing outside her apartment door with a firm but apologetic look on his face. I'm sorry for this. I never thought it would get this far. Maya opened the door and looked at him. It's not about apologies anymore, Victor. It's about doing what's right. We can't let them control our lives. They spent the evening strategizing, planning how to fight back against the public backlash. Maya insisted that they not allow this to define their future. She didn't want her child growing up in the shadow of a scandal. She didn't want to be afraid of the next headline. Victor was resolute. We'll get through this. Together. For the child. The storm had passed, but the aftermath lingered. The media, once a chaotic force, had settled down, but the scars it left behind remained etched in Maya's mind and heart. The world had witnessed her pain, her struggle, and the wounds were not easily forgotten. It had been 2 months since the story had broken, 2 months of public humiliation, personal challenges, and tentative healing. The media storm had shaken everything, but somehow, Maya had found her footing again. The first steps of co-parenting with Victor had not been easy, but they were beginning to find a rhythm, a quiet understanding between them. But things weren't perfect. There were days when the weight of everything, the betrayal, the judgment, the unanswered questions, would resurface, threatening to swallow her whole. Maya had learned to push through, though. She had no other choice. Maya sat in her small but cozy apartment, staring out the window at the bustling city below. It was a rainy afternoon, and the soft tapping of raindrops against the window was oddly soothing. Her mind wandered back to those early days when she had first learned she was pregnant, before Victor had denied her, before everything had spiraled out of control. She hadn't known then how much her life would change. She hadn't known how strong she was capable of being. But now, as she looked at her child, healthy, bright-eyed, and full of life, Maya knew that every step she had taken, no matter how painful, had been worth it. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Victor. "Can we talk? I've been thinking about the custody arrangements for next month. I think we need to sit down and plan a more consistent schedule. The child deserves stability, and I think we can do better than what we have now." Maya read the message twice. Her chest tightened. The idea of discussing another custody arrangement, of delving into the details of their future as co-parents, brought a wave of unease. She had trusted Victor once before, only to have him turn away when she needed him most. Still, they had made progress. And for their child's sake, she couldn't afford to pull back now. "Let's talk. I'll be free after 5, Maya typed back, trying to keep her tone neutral. Victor arrived at Maya's apartment later that evening, a little earlier than expected. He looked different now, more settled, more focused. The man who had once been all about control and perfection had, in some ways, become someone else entirely. Maya opened the door and nodded at him, stepping aside to let him in. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly. Victor smiled faintly. "We're in this together, right? Just, let's make sure we're doing what's best for our kid." He sat on the couch, folding his hands in front of him. Maya took the chair opposite him, her eyes not meeting his immediately. They had made it this far, but there was still so much left unsaid between them. The conversation started with the usual formalities, discussing the logistics of the visitation schedule, the child's progress, and minor adjustments that needed to be made. But as the minutes passed, the tension in the room began to shift. What started as a practical discussion became something more personal. Maya hesitated, then spoke. "Victor, I think we need to talk about more than just the schedule. I've been thinking about everything about us, about the past. I don't know how to trust you yet. I don't know how to fully let go of what happened." Victor looked at her, his face a mixture of guilt and understanding. "I get that," he said softly. "I've hurt you. And I can't change that. I can't take it back. But I want to be different. For you. For our child. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be a father, what it means to be present. I don't want to just show up for visitation, Maya. I want to be in his life. I want to show up when it counts." Maya felt a lump in her throat. His words, sincere as they were, opened a wound she hadn't realized was still fresh. She had spent so long holding on to her hurt, to her resentment, that she hadn't allowed herself to see the possibility of healing. "I don't know how I'm supposed to trust you again, Victor," she admitted, her voice trembling. "You didn't just hurt me, you hurt our child. I've had to fight every day to protect what's ours." Victor's eyes softened, and for a moment, Maya could see the man he was trying to become, the man he was capable of being. The man he could be, if only she would let him in. "I don't expect you to trust me overnight," he said, his voice low. I need you to see that I'm not the same person I was. And I need you to believe that I'm doing this because I care. I care about you. I care about our child." Maya held his gaze for a long time, the weight of their shared past hanging in the silence between them. Her heart pounded, unsure of what she wanted. She had lived in fear for so long, afraid of being hurt again, afraid of making the same mistakes. But for the first time in a long time, Maya allowed herself to consider the possibility of moving forward, not for her, but for their child. Because no matter how hard it was, they had to coexist. They had to find a way to work together. "I'll try," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But you need to show me you're in this. You need to show me that you're here for us." Victor nodded, his face serious. "I will. I'll prove it to you, Maya. I will." The conversation ended shortly after, both of them feeling the weight of the promises they had made. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a step forward. And for the first time in a long time, Maya felt a fragile hope begin to form. Later that night, as Maya lay in bed, the quiet hum of the city filling the room, she thought about the future. The future that seemed so uncertain just a few months ago now felt just a little bit clearer. The road ahead would be difficult, full of emotional hurdles and painful reminders of the past, but she knew now that it was a road they both had to walk together. The next few weeks were a delicate balance of progress and setbacks. Maya and Victor had agreed to take things one step at a time, and although the days felt long and full of quiet tension, there was an unspoken understanding between them. They were no longer fighting each other. They were fighting for something greater, their child's future. Maya had to adjust to this new reality. Having Victor more involved in their child's life meant there were moments of connection that she wasn't quite prepared for. The first time Victor held the baby in his arms, a wave of emotion hit Maya, a mixture of gratitude, anger, and tenderness. The man who had once walked away was now here, trying to be a father. But it was complicated. She couldn't help but feel that this act, this attempt at redemption, would never be enough to erase the years of emotional pain. She could forgive him, but could she forget? Could she ever feel safe again in this space they were sharing? The next Saturday, Victor arrived early, as he had every weekend. Maya had gotten used to the routine now, but still, each interaction with him felt like walking a fine line, one step forward, two steps back. She opened the door to find him with a large bag filled with toys, baby clothes, and what seemed like a whole list of things for the child. "Hey," he greeted her, holding up the bag. "I thought I'd pick up a few things. You know, for the weekends. Just in case I need them." His voice had that sincere edge to it, as if he were trying to prove something. Maya smiled faintly. "You didn't need to buy all of that. But thanks." Victor stepped inside, glancing around the apartment. It was small but cozy, a reflection of the life Maya had built on her own. He noticed the framed photos on the walls, pictures of Maya and her child, moments of joy frozen in time. For a moment, he felt a pang of regret. How much had he missed? "I know I've missed a lot," he said quietly, setting the bag down on the couch. "But I'm here now. I want to make it count." Maya nodded. "It's not just about being here, Victor. It's about consistency. It's about showing up, every time." They spent the day together walking to the park, sitting on the grass with the child between them, talking more than they had in months. Maya couldn't deny the small comfort she felt with him beside her. But the walls she had built were still there, though less towering, and they kept her at a distance. It was hard to reconcile the man who had once hurt her with the one trying so hard to be a good father. At the park, Victor reached out, gently pushing the stroller with a tenderness Maya hadn't expected. She watched him, noticing how natural he seemed with the child. "I see it," Maya said quietly, almost to herself. Victor raised an eyebrow. "See what?" "The father in you. I see it now." Later that night, as Victor left to go back to his apartment, Maya stood at the door, holding the baby close to her chest. She was grateful for his efforts, but part of her still held back. She wasn't ready to let her guard down completely. Maybe she never would be. The following week, as Maya sat in her small kitchen, her phone rang again. It was Victor. "Hey, Maya," his voice was tense. "There's something we need to talk about." Something came up. Maya felt a twist of unease. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about our living situation," he said, hesitating. "I know we've talked about it before, but I want to take the next step. I found a place nearby. A house. A bigger place. I think it's time we start living closer." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "You want to move closer? To me?" Victor sighed. "Yes, but not just to be near you. It's for the child. I want to be part of his life in every way I can. Not just weekends, not just scheduled visits. I want to be there when he wakes up, when he goes to sleep. I want to be his father in every sense." Maya was silent for a moment, processing his words. She could see the sincerity in his tone, but it didn't change the fact that this was a huge step. A step she hadn't expected, one that could either bring them closer or tear them apart. "I'm not sure, Victor. We've been taking it slow, and this feels like too much, too fast." Victor's voice softened. "I get it. I just want to show you that I'm serious. I want to be a good father, Maya. And I want you to see that." Maya sat back in her chair, her thoughts swirling. She had spent so much time building her life, protecting her child, and healing from the wounds of betrayal. Could she really open herself up to this new reality, one where Victor was no longer just an estranged father but an active, present partner in raising their child? She didn't know the answer, but she knew she had to think about it carefully. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about their child, and she couldn't afford to make any hasty decisions. The days following Victor's offer were filled with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Maya spoke to friends, family, and Sarah, her lawyer, trying to gain some perspective. Most people advised her to take the time she needed, to be cautious. No one wanted her to rush into something that could potentially hurt her or the child. But Maya was torn. A part of her longed for the stability that Victor's offer promised, and yet, the fear of repeating past mistakes kept her hesitant. What if this was just another grand gesture that would crumble under the weight of their complicated history? One evening, as Maya sat on her couch, she received a message from Victor. It was simple, yet it carried a weight of sincerity. "Whatever you decide, I'm here. But I want you to know that I'm serious about this. About us." Maya placed her phone down, her heart racing. She looked at the baby, who was peacefully sleeping in the crib beside her. It was time to decide. The days that followed were filled with an unsettling quiet. Maya spent her time weighing Victor's offer, considering the consequences of moving forward and what it would mean for her, for their child, and for her own sense of self. Could she really trust him again? Could she allow him into their lives in such an intimate way after all the pain he had caused? She sat by the window one morning, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the outline of her coffee cup. The rain had begun to fall softly outside, the steady drip of droplets against the glass offering a strange sense of calm. Her phone buzzed. It was Victor. "I've found a place. It's just down the street from you. It's not huge, but it's big enough for me to be close to you and the child. I want to show you." Maya stared at the message, her heart thudding in her chest. She had known he was serious, but the reality of it was beginning to set in. Moving closer, it meant more than just proximity. It meant taking a leap of faith. It meant that she would have to face the possibility of rebuilding something with Victor, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. The next day, she agreed to meet him at the property. Victor had arranged everything, the tour of the place, the plans for how he would fit into the neighborhood. When she arrived, she was taken aback by the small but charming house. It was nestled in a quiet street, close to parks and schools. It seemed like the perfect place for a child to grow up. Victor greeted her with a smile, his expression hopeful but still tinged with uncertainty. He had come a long way, but Maya could see the weight of everything he had put on the line for this. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice gentle. Maya stood for a moment, taking in the space. The house wasn't grand, but it had potential. It had warmth. It felt like a place where a family could grow. "I think it's nice," she said slowly, her voice measured. "It's not too big, but it feels right." Victor stepped beside her, looking over the space. "I'm not looking for perfection, Maya. I just want to be here, to be a father. I want to build something stable for the child. A place we can both be proud of." Maya hesitated. She felt the pull of his words, the sincerity in his tone. She could see that he was trying, but part of her was still scared. Could she really trust him to follow through? Could they both commit to this new chapter, to this delicate dance of co-parenting? Later that evening, after the tour had ended and they parted ways, Maya returned to her apartment with a sense of calm but also uncertainty. She needed time to think. The offer to move closer, to create something that resembled a real family, was tempting. But there was still so much to consider. Victor didn't press her. He respected her space, just as he had promised. He sent her a message later that evening, a simple note. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait for your decision. I'm not going anywhere." His patience was a rare thing, something Maya hadn't expected. She had always known Victor as someone who rushed into decisions, who took control of situations. But now, he was different. He was giving her the time and space to decide what was best for their family. The following days were filled with reflection. Maya spent time talking to friends, family, and even her therapist. She needed to process everything. The pain of the past, the fear of being hurt again, and the uncertainty of what moving forward meant for her. She couldn't deny that the idea of a more stable life for her child, the chance for Victor to be present, was something that mattered. But could she truly forgive him? Could she trust that this time, he wouldn't walk away? One afternoon, as she sat in the park with her child, she saw a couple with their young daughter. The child ran ahead, her laughter echoing in the air as her parents chased after her, smiling. For a moment, Maya allowed herself to imagine that life, a life where things were simple, where love and trust existed without fear. Her phone buzzed again. It was Victor, just checking in. "Have you had a chance to think about the house? I know it's a lot to take in." Maya smiled softly. He was trying. He was really trying. That night, she lay in bed, her child sleeping soundly beside her, and her thoughts once again turned to Victor. She thought about the man who had once hurt her deeply, the man who had denied their child, and the man who was now standing in front of her, offering a new beginning. He wasn't perfect, but who was? She realized then that she didn't need perfection. She needed honesty. She needed commitment. And she needed to trust that they could build a future together, not because they were perfect, but because they were both willing to work for it. The next morning, Maya called Victor. Her heart was steady, her voice clear. "I've thought about it," she said, "and I'm willing to try. Let's take this step together." Victor's voice on the other end was filled with emotion. "Are you sure?" Maya nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Yes, I'm sure." In the weeks that followed, Maya and Victor began to make the house a home. They took things slow, making plans for the future and working together to create a stable, loving environment for their child. The road ahead wasn't without challenges. There were still moments of doubt, still lingering fear. But for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like they were building something real, not just for their child, but for themselves. Victor moved into the house, just as promised. It wasn't the fairy tale they had once imagined, but it was theirs, imperfect, flawed, but filled with hope. Maya could see the effort Victor was making, the small gestures that showed he was serious about being a father. He showed up for their child, not just physically, but emotionally. And that was enough for Maya. The first night they all spent together in the new house was quiet. The baby slept soundly in the crib, and Maya and Victor sat on the couch, side by side, not needing to say anything to know that this was the beginning of something new. Victor reached out and took her hand, a small, simple gesture. Maya squeezed his hand in return. They still had a long way to go, but for the first time, Maya allowed herself to believe that they could do this together. The house was quiet in the early morning hours, the faint sound of birds outside breaking the stillness. Maya stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for her child, her mind still swirling with the changes that had come over the past few months. Victor had moved in, just as they had agreed. The space was filled with new furniture, toys, and a sense of shared responsibility that hadn't existed before. The tension that had once dominated their interactions seemed to have faded, replaced with tentative steps toward something more stable, more permanent. But Maya couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in her chest, the feeling that everything was moving too fast. They were learning to live together again, to co-parent, and to navigate a life built on a foundation that was still being tested. Victor walked into the kitchen, his eyes tired but warm. "Morning," he said softly, rubbing his eyes. Maya offered him a small smile. "Morning. You sleep well?" He nodded, stepping closer to the counter. "Better. It feels good to be here, even if it's all a little overwhelming." Maya watched him, her gaze lingering for a moment. "It's a lot to take in. But I'm glad you're here." Victor smiled at her, a quiet understanding passing between them. "I want to make this work, Maya. I really do." Despite the sincerity in his voice, Maya couldn't shake the anxiety that lingered just below the surface. She had let him into their lives, had allowed him to be a part of their world once again. But trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. Her heart still carried the scars of his past actions, the pain of his denial, the sting of his absence when she needed him most. And yet, there was something different in his eyes now. The remorse was there, but so was a genuine effort to be better. For her, for their child, for the future they were beginning to build. The days passed slowly, each one marked by small moments of progress. Maya and Victor fell into a routine. She would leave for work in the morning, and Victor would spend the day with their child, taking care of things around the house. He had taken a leave of absence from his company, wanting to focus on his role as a father. Maya appreciated the gesture, even though it left her conflicted at times. She still wasn't entirely sure how to balance her independence with the closeness they were now developing. She had spent so many years building a life on her own, protecting her heart from being hurt again, that it was difficult to imagine relying on someone else, especially Victor. One evening, as Maya was finishing up some paperwork, she heard the sound of laughter from the living room. She smiled to herself, drawn to the noise. When she entered, she saw Victor sitting on the floor with their child, playing with a set of building blocks. "Hey," Maya said softly, leaning against the doorframe. Victor looked up and grinned. "Hey, you should see this. We've made a tower, it's almost as tall as me." Maya stepped inside, her heart swelling as she watched the two of them. For the first time, it felt like a family. Not a perfect family, but one that was beginning to find its way. Later that night, after their child was in bed, Maya and Victor sat together on the couch. The quiet comfort of the evening wrapped around them, the space between them shrinking. Victor turned to her, his voice hesitant. "I've been thinking about the future." Maya raised an eyebrow, curious but cautious. "What about it?" "I want to make sure we're doing this right," he said, his eyes searching hers. "I want to build something that lasts. I want our child to grow up knowing that we've got this. That we've got him." Maya's heart skipped. She knew Victor's intentions were sincere, but the weight of his words hung heavily in the air. "And what does that look like?" she asked quietly. Victor exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "It means being present. It means being here for you and for him, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. I've spent too much time hiding from this, from the responsibility. I want to do better." Maya nodded slowly. She had heard his words before, but there was something in the way he said them this time, a depth that had been missing in the past. But could she really allow herself to believe it? Could she trust him fully? The following week, Maya and Victor attended a parenting class together, a suggestion made by a friend of Maya's who had gone through the same journey. The class was designed to help new parents navigate the challenges of co-parenting, communication, and shared responsibility. It wasn't easy. The class was filled with discussions about boundaries, trust, and the emotional weight that came with raising a child together after a complicated history. There were moments when Maya felt overwhelmed, when she wanted to pull away, to retreat into the space she had so carefully carved out for herself. But as the class continued, Maya began to notice something different. Victor was attentive, listening to the instructors, asking questions, and taking notes. He was engaged, genuinely trying to understand how he could be a better partner, a better father. Maya couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That evening, as they left the class, Victor turned to her with a smile. "You okay?" he asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I'm fine," Maya replied, trying to shake off the lingering doubt. "It's just a lot to process." Victor nodded, his expression softening. "I get it. I know we're not perfect, but I want us to be better. Together." Maya paused for a moment, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. "I want that too, Victor. But we're not there yet. We can't rush it." "I know," he said, his voice gentle. "We'll take it one step at a time." As the weeks turned into months, Maya and Victor continued to navigate their new life together. The road was still uncertain, filled with emotional hurdles and moments of doubt, but they were learning to lean on each other. Slowly, trust was rebuilding, but it was fragile. The scars of their past were still there, but they were no longer the driving force behind their actions. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to imagine a future where she and Victor could coexist in peace, where their child could grow up in a home filled with love, stability, and support. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough. The days and weeks continued to blend together, each one filled with small moments of progress and new challenges. Maya had been cautious at first, testing the waters with Victor, unsure of how much she could trust him. But now, as they settled into a new routine, one that included shared responsibilities, evening walks with the baby, and quiet moments together. She could sense the shift within herself. Victor was trying. That much was undeniable. He was showing up, being present in ways that mattered. But the emotional scars from the past still lingered, and there were days when Maya felt as if they were both treading water, hoping not to sink. One evening, after putting their child to bed, Maya sat on the couch, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. She stared at the flickering television but wasn't really watching it. Her mind was elsewhere, drifting through memories of the years before. Victor sat beside her, flipping through his phone. He had started his own business venture, something he'd been passionate about for a while. Maya couldn't help but notice how much he had changed, how much he had started to care about things beyond the business world that once consumed him. Victor looked over at her, sensing her stillness. "Maya, I know I've asked you a lot of questions lately about us. But there's something I've been thinking about." She turned to face him, her expression cautious. "What is it?" Victor hesitated, setting his phone down. "I know it's been difficult, and I'm not expecting things to be perfect. But I was wondering if we should start planning for the future. Together." Maya's heart skipped a beat, the sudden mention of the future bringing a mixture of hope and dread. "What do you mean?" Victor's voice softened. "I've been thinking about how we can build something lasting. Not just co-parenting, but a future where we don't have to live in the shadow of the past. I want to get a house, one that's bigger, with a yard. Somewhere where our child can grow up surrounded by love, by both of us." Maya stared at him, her mind racing. It wasn't that she didn't want that future. She did. She wanted stability, peace, and a family for her child. But the idea of committing to that future with Victor, after everything, still scared her. "I don't know, Victor," she said quietly. "We've been through so much. I've been trying to believe that we can make this work, but sometimes it feels like we're only doing it for the child. I don't want to rush into something that we're not ready for." Victor nodded, his expression serious. "I understand. I'm not rushing you. I want to build this with you. But I can't do it alone, Maya. I need you." For a long moment, Maya didn't speak. She watched him, taking in the sincerity in his eyes, the way he was looking at her. It wasn't just about a house or a future together. It was about building something from the ground up, something that had been shattered and was now being carefully pieced back together. "I'm scared," she admitted softly, almost to herself. "Scared that we'll fall apart again. That this won't work. I've spent so long protecting myself, Victor. I don't know how to stop." Victor reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I know. And I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not asking you to rush. I just want to take the next step, and I want you to be with me. Not just as a co-parent, but as a partner, someone who believes in what we're building together." Maya exhaled slowly, her chest tightening. She wanted to believe in him. She wanted to believe in them. But the weight of their past, the hurt, the anger, was hard to ignore. Still, she could see the change in Victor, see the effort he was putting into being a father, into being the man she needed him to be. "I'm not sure, Victor," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I'll try. I'll try to believe that we can do this, not just for the child, but for us. Because I want that too. I want us to have something real." The weeks that followed were a mix of excitement and hesitation. Victor began making plans for the new house, researching properties, and discussing their future with Maya. They visited different neighborhoods together, looking at houses with spacious yards and quiet streets. It felt surreal, but the thought of building a future with Victor, one that wasn't defined by their past mistakes, was starting to become less terrifying. Victor was careful, patient. He never pushed Maya for answers, always leaving her room to breathe. He knew that trust had to be earned, not demanded. One Saturday afternoon, they walked through a potential property. It was a large house with plenty of space, a garden in the back, and a cozy kitchen that Maya could already imagine herself cooking in. As they stood in the yard, Maya turned to Victor, her expression uncertain but hopeful. "This could be it, you know? This could be where we finally get to start over. Together." Victor smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "I think so, too." Maya took a deep breath, her hand finding his. "I'm willing to try. For us. For the future." But just as the idea of a new beginning seemed within reach, Maya was reminded that the journey they had embarked upon was still fragile. Victor's past, their past, would always be there, lingering in the background. The emotional scars didn't disappear overnight, no matter how much they both wanted to move on. That night, as Maya sat alone in the quiet of the house, she allowed herself to imagine the possibility of a future, one where Victor was a permanent part of their lives. The idea felt both comforting and unsettling. She had spent so long protecting her heart, and the thought of giving it fully to someone again felt like a leap of faith. But maybe it was time to take that leap. The days grew longer as Maya and Victor took cautious steps toward a future together. The house was slowly becoming more than just a place where they coexisted. It was beginning to feel like a home. But beneath the surface of their efforts to co-parent and rebuild their relationship, a sense of uncertainty lingered. Maya often found herself in moments of quiet reflection, wondering if this fragile piece could truly hold. She had been through so much, the hurt, the betrayal, the loneliness. She had built walls around her heart to protect herself, and now, with Victor back in their lives, those walls were starting to crack. She didn't know if she could ever fully trust him again. But every day, with every small gesture, he was proving to her that he was trying. Trying to be a father. Trying to be a partner. Trying to be the man she had once hoped he could be. One evening, after a long day, Victor arrived home with takeout. It was a simple gesture, but Maya could see how much effort he had put into it. He had picked up her favorite food, knowing that she was exhausted from work and the responsibilities of the day. He set the bags down on the kitchen counter and turned to her with a small smile. "I thought we could have a quiet night in. Just the two of us." Maya's heart warmed at his thoughtfulness. She was used to being on her own, but having him there, being present in a way that felt real and not rushed, was a different experience. She smiled back at him. "I think that sounds perfect." They spent the evening eating dinner together, the soft glow of the kitchen light casting a warm atmosphere around them. It was one of those rare moments when the world outside seemed to fade away, and they were just two people sharing a meal. Maya felt a sense of peace, a calm she hadn't known in a long time. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," Victor said as they finished their meal. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on hers. "I know I've made mistakes. And I know I can't undo the past, but I want to prove to you that I'm here. That I'm committed. Not just for our child, but for us." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She had heard him say these things before, but there was something different in his voice now, something that felt more grounded, more sincere. "I know," she replied softly. "I see it, Victor. I see you trying. And I want to believe in us. I really do." As the days passed, their routines became more solidified. Maya went to work during the day while Victor took care of their child, something she could hardly believe at first. The man who had once been so distant, so wrapped up in his own world, was now taking an active role in their life, in their family. One afternoon, Victor took their child to the park, sending Maya a picture of the two of them playing. It was a moment of pure joy, a small but significant step in building their bond. But as they grew closer, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The fear that had lived inside her for so long, the fear that Victor would disappoint her again, that their fragile connection would shatter, crept back into her thoughts. That evening, as she sat on the couch after putting their child to bed, she found herself overwhelmed by a mixture of emotions. There was love, yes, but also a deep fear that she wasn't sure how to navigate. Victor entered the living room, sensing her shift in mood. He sat beside her, his hand resting gently on hers. "What's on your mind?" he asked softly. Maya took a deep breath. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm scared that we're going too fast, that I'm going to get hurt again. I want this to work, Victor. I want to trust you. But I don't know how." Victor's expression softened, and he squeezed her hand. "I understand. And I don't want you to rush into anything. I'm not asking you to forget the past, Maya. I'm asking you to take it one day at a time with me. Because I want us to have something real. I want to build a life with you and our child." Maya looked at him, her heart swelling with both hope and hesitation. "I'm scared, Victor. I'm scared to trust again." He nodded. "And you don't have to trust me all at once. Trust is earned. I'll show you every day that I'm here. That I'm not going anywhere. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Maya felt herself letting go of the fear just a little bit. It wasn't an overnight change, but it was progress. As the weeks passed, Maya allowed herself to be more vulnerable with Victor. They continued to work through their challenges, each day taking small steps forward. The house, the one they had once talked about with uncertainty, was becoming their home, a place of laughter, quiet moments, and shared responsibility. One afternoon, Maya sat down with Victor to discuss the future, something they had put off for a while. They had made it through the early stages of rebuilding their relationship, but now, it was time to make plans for what came next. They discussed moving into a bigger house, finding a permanent place where they could all be together as a family. They talked about co-parenting, about the ways they could support each other as they continued to raise their child. Maya, for the first time in a long time, could see the possibility of something lasting, something stable. That night, after their conversation, Maya lay in bed beside Victor. She had spent so many years protecting herself, so many years afraid of trusting again. But now, as she lay next to him, she allowed herself to dream of a future that didn't carry the weight of her past. Victor reached out, his hand finding hers. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Maya squeezed his hand. "I think so. For the first time in a long time, I think I'm okay." Victor smiled, his heart full of gratitude. "We're going to be okay." It had been nearly a year since Maya and Victor had made the decision to move forward, to start anew and rebuild their lives for the sake of their child. The house they had moved into was now a home, filled with the sounds of laughter, the comfort of shared spaces, and a growing sense of trust. But even with everything in place, the road ahead was still filled with challenges. Maya had grown accustomed to the rhythm of their new life. She'd taken on more responsibilities at work, while Victor continued to dedicate himself to being a present father. They had found their way as co-parents, navigating the delicate balance of raising their child while also healing the wounds of their past. But despite the quiet comfort of their routines, Maya still struggled. She wasn't sure if the doubts she felt were remnants of the old pain or a genuine concern about the future. The fear of losing herself, of repeating the mistakes of the past, lingered just beneath the surface. One evening, as Maya stood at the kitchen counter, preparing dinner, she heard the sound of the front door opening. She glanced over her shoulder to see Victor walking in, carrying a small gift bag. "Hey, I got you something," he said with a grin, his eyes bright with excitement. Maya raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" Victor placed the bag on the counter. "I know you've been working so hard lately, and I thought you could use a little treat." Maya opened the bag and pulled out a small, beautifully bound journal. The cover was simple, but elegant, a deep navy blue with silver lettering embossed on the front. She ran her fingers over the cover, surprised by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "Victor, this is beautiful," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you." He smiled, watching her carefully. "I thought you might want to write down some of your thoughts, or just have a place to reflect. You've been so busy, and I want to make sure you're taking care of yourself, too." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. The gesture, though small, was something that reminded her of the man Victor had become, the man who was present, who saw her not just as a mother but as a person with her own needs, her own desires. She placed the journal down on the counter and walked over to him, her heart swelling. "I don't think I tell you enough, but thank you for being here. For being the man you are now." Victor's expression softened, and he gently took her hand. "I'm here because I want to be. I'm here because I love you, Maya. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. And I'll keep trying." Maya's chest tightened as she looked into his eyes. For so long, she had questioned whether she could trust him again, whether she could let go of the past. But in that moment, standing together, she realized that forgiveness wasn't something that happened overnight. It was something that had to be earned, slowly, over time. And Victor was doing just that, earning her trust, piece by piece. Later that night, after dinner, Maya sat on the couch, flipping through the journal Victor had given her. The first page was blank, waiting for her thoughts to fill it. It felt like a fresh start, a new chapter. Maybe it was time for her to reflect on how far they had come, how far she had come. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Sarah, her lawyer and close friend. "I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet tomorrow?" Maya frowned, her stomach twisting with unease. She had been hoping that her life could finally settle, that the past could stay behind them. But Sarah's message felt like a reminder that their past wasn't so easily buried. The next day, Maya met Sarah at a local cafe. Sarah had always been a calming presence in her life, someone who had supported her during the most difficult times. Maya could see the concern on Sarah's face as soon as they sat down. "What's going on, Sarah?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Sarah leaned forward, her expression serious. "I've been following some developments regarding Victor's business. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there are rumors about his company. They're saying there's a chance he could face legal trouble. It could affect his ability to keep his commitments." Maya's heart sank. She had known about some of the pressures Victor was facing at work, but she hadn't realized the extent of the situation. "What kind of trouble?" Sarah hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "There are allegations of financial mismanagement and possible insider trading. It's still in the early stages, but if it escalates, it could seriously impact Victor's finances, his reputation, everything." Maya sat back, her mind racing. The weight of the conversation was overwhelming. She had spent so long trying to rebuild their life, trying to find stability, and now this? It felt like everything was about to fall apart once again. Later that night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of Sarah's words pressing on her chest. She didn't want to think about the possibility of Victor being caught up in a legal scandal, but she couldn't ignore the reality that it could tear apart everything they had worked so hard to build. When Victor came home, he found Maya sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale, her hands shaking slightly as she sipped from her cup of tea. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Maya looked up at him, her heart heavy. "Sarah told me something today. About your business." Victor's expression immediately shifted, and he sat down beside her. "I knew this would come up eventually," he said, his voice tinged with guilt. "Maya, I never wanted you to find out this way. But the rumors, they're true. There are some issues, legal ones, that I'm working through right now." Maya's throat tightened. "Victor, what does this mean for us? For our future?" Victor took a deep breath, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't know yet. But I promise you, I'm going to fix this. Whatever happens, I'm not going to let it affect us. I'm not going to lose what we've built." Maya listened to him, her heart torn between wanting to believe him and the fear that this new crisis would unravel everything. She had worked so hard to build a life where stability was within reach, and now it seemed as if they were facing yet another obstacle. Maya spent the next few days consumed by thoughts of Victor's business troubles. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on her, and she found herself questioning everything she had believed about their future. Just when she had begun to trust that they were moving forward, the past, in the form of Victor's financial and legal issues, had reared its head once again. She couldn't shake the sense of uncertainty. The stability they had built together seemed fragile, and the fear of losing everything loomed larger than ever. The next morning, Victor arrived home earlier than usual, his face drawn and tired. Maya noticed the deep lines under his eyes. The toll this situation had taken on him was evident. She had been hesitant to confront him, unsure of how to ask the questions that were consuming her. "Hey," Victor greeted her, his voice low, his hands wringing together as if searching for something to say. Maya set the cup of tea she had been holding down and looked at him, her voice steady but filled with concern. "Victor, what is going on? You promised me you would keep me in the loop. But now I'm hearing things from Sarah, and it feels like you're keeping me in the dark." Victor sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know I should have told you sooner. But I wanted to handle it on my own. I didn't want to drag you into it. The rumors you've heard, they're about a few bad investments I made last year. There's also a report on some of my dealings that's causing a lot of noise." Maya felt her heart tighten as he spoke. She had suspected that the situation was serious, but hearing the details from Victor was like a punch to the gut. She had always known that Victor's business was his world, it was his identity, his driving force. But now, it seemed like that very world was beginning to unravel. "Victor," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly, "this isn't just about business anymore. This is about us. About our future. You're not the only one this affects. I've spent the last year rebuilding my life, and now it feels like everything we've worked for is hanging by a thread. Victor stepped closer to her, his eyes softening. I know. And I'm so sorry for putting you through this. You don't deserve any of it. But I'm not going to let it destroy us. I'm going to fight this, no matter what it takes. Maya wanted to believe him, but the uncertainty that gripped her heart made it difficult. She had always been independent, always been the one to hold things together when the world around her crumbled. But now, she had to make a choice. Was she going to stand by Victor, or was she going to protect herself and their child from the fallout? Later that day, Maya and Victor sat together at the kitchen table, their child playing quietly in the next room. The weight of their conversation hung between them as Maya spoke, her voice steady but her eyes filled with fear. I've been thinking, she began, her hands clenched tightly around her mug. I want to believe you, Victor. I really do. But everything is on the line now. If this doesn't work out, if your business falls apart, where does that leave us? Victor took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. I understand what you're saying. I know I've made mistakes, and I know this is bigger than just me now. But I'm asking you to trust me. I won't let this affect our future, Maya. I can't. Maya looked at him, her heart torn between the love she still felt for him and the fear that she had been carrying all along. It's not just about you anymore, Victor. It's about what's best for our child. If this goes bad, if everything falls apart, I need to know that we'll still be okay. That you'll still be there. Victor reached for her hand, his voice filled with raw emotion. I'll always be here. I'll always be here for you. For him. I'm fighting, Maya. I promise you, I'm doing everything I can to fix this. I won't let you go through this alone. The days that followed were filled with tension. Victor worked tirelessly to resolve his legal troubles, meeting with lawyers, financial advisors, and reporters. But the weight of the situation weighed heavily on him. His once confident demeanor was now laced with doubt and fatigue. Maya, for her part, struggled with her own internal conflict. She wanted to stand by Victor, to trust that they could overcome this obstacle together. But every time she allowed herself to get too close, the fear that she would be hurt again crept in, like a shadow she couldn't shake. One night, after putting their child to bed, Victor came to sit beside Maya on the couch. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there, his hand gently resting on hers. The silence between them was filled with unspoken words, a shared understanding of the uncertainty that lingered over their lives. Maya, Victor said finally, his voice soft, I know I've asked a lot of you. And I know I'm not perfect. But I want you to know that I'm doing everything I can to make things right. For us. For our child. Maya turned to him, her eyes searching his face. She had been through so much, and the thought of risking everything again terrified her. But as she looked at him, really looked at him, she saw the man he was trying to become. The man who was trying to make amends. The man who wanted to build something with her, no matter how broken their past had been. I'm scared, Victor, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm scared that if I trust you again, it will all fall apart. Victor's eyes softened, and he took her hand in both of his. I know. And I don't expect you to forget. But I will show you every day that I'm here. That I'm not going anywhere. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the man you need me to be. The weeks that followed brought small victories and setbacks. Victor's legal issues slowly began to resolve, but the fear of the unknown still hung heavy over their lives. Maya, despite her hesitations, continued to stand by him, taking each day as it came. They were learning to navigate the complexities of their relationship, understanding that the road to healing wouldn't be smooth. One evening, after dinner, they sat together on the couch, their child asleep in the next room. The air between them felt different, more open, more honest. I've been thinking, Maya began, her voice tentative but strong. Maybe we should start planning for the future. For real. Not just for us, but for our child. I don't want to live in fear anymore. I want to build something lasting. Victor turned to her, his eyes filled with a mixture of relief and hope. I agree. And I want to build it with you. Together. One step at a time. As the weeks turned into months, Maya and Victor continued to rebuild their lives, slowly but surely. The road ahead was still filled with uncertainties, but they were no longer facing it alone. Together, they were learning to trust again, to hope again, and to build the future they had always dreamed of. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. And that was enough. Weeks passed, and Maya found herself adjusting to the new rhythm of life that was taking shape. Victor had made progress with his legal troubles. The rumors had started to quiet down, the legal team working hard to resolve the situation without further damage to his reputation. While the burden was far from lifted, the weight seemed a little more manageable. For Maya, the journey of rebuilding trust was far from linear. Each day was a small victory, each moment a step forward. But there were still days when the fear crept back in, days when she wondered if they were truly meant to overcome the past and build a future together. Victor had done his part to prove himself. He was showing up. He was present. But there were still the ghosts of their past to contend with, and Maya often found herself caught between the desire to trust and the instinct to protect herself. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, their child nestled comfortably in their crib, Maya looked over at Victor. The soft light of the living room cast a warm glow on his face. He was no longer the man she had met years ago, the man who had been distant, arrogant, and emotionally unavailable. He had changed. He had grown. But the question remained, could she trust that the changes were permanent? Victor noticed the weight of her gaze and turned to her. "What's on your mind?" Maya hesitated before answering. "I'm just thinking. We've come so far. And you've proven yourself, Victor. I see how hard you're working. How much you want this to work. But I'm still scared." Victor nodded, his expression softening. "I know you are. I don't blame you. I've hurt you, and I can't undo that. I wish I could. But all I can do is show you, day by day, that I'm here for you. That I'm not going anywhere." Maya exhaled slowly, her eyes searching his. "I don't want to keep living in fear, Victor. I don't want to live in the past anymore, but it's hard to know what the future will look like. I keep thinking about what happened, and it feels like we're always walking on thin ice." Victor's eyes softened. He reached out and took her hand in his. "I understand, Maya. I know it's not easy. And I'm not expecting you to forget what I've done. I can't ask you to do that. But I am asking you to trust me. To trust that I'm not the same man who hurt you. I've learned, Maya. I've learned the hard way. And I don't want to make those mistakes again." Maya sat back, taking in his words. She had heard him say similar things before, but there was something in his voice now that felt different. It wasn't just an apology, it was a promise. A promise that he would keep trying, keep showing up, keep proving himself. She had always been the one to hold things together, to keep moving forward no matter what. But for the first time in a long time, she could see the possibility of building something real, a future where they didn't have to live in the shadow of their past mistakes. "I want that too," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I want to believe in us. I want to trust again." Victor's face lit up with a mixture of relief and hope. "We'll take it one step at a time. I know we're not there yet, but we're getting there. Together." The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of understanding and connection. Maya began to let her guard down, little by little. She saw the effort Victor was putting in, the way he was genuinely trying to be present, to show up not just as a father but as a partner. But there were still challenges. The road ahead was not easy, and there were moments when they both stumbled. Old fears resurfaced. Maya sometimes found herself pulling away, overwhelmed by the fear of repeating past mistakes. Victor, too, struggled with the pressure of living up to the promises he had made. But through it all, they remained committed to each other. They were learning, slowly but surely, how to be a family. Not a perfect family, but one built on a foundation of trust, effort, and love. One Saturday afternoon, Victor suggested that they take a trip to the countryside. It had been a while since they had done something for fun, just the two of them. Maya agreed, knowing that it would be a good way to reconnect, to build new memories away from the pressures of daily life. They drove to a small cabin nestled in the mountains, surrounded by lush greenery and quiet trails. The air was fresh, the scenery breathtaking. For a few days, they were free from the constant noise of the outside world. No work. No legal troubles. Just the two of them, surrounded by nature. It was a welcome reprieve. On the second night of their trip, after a long day of hiking, they sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the sun set over the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, casting a peaceful glow over the landscape. Victor turned to Maya, his voice soft. "This feels good. Just being here with you. No distractions." Maya smiled, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. "It does. I haven't felt this peaceful in a long time." They sat in silence for a while, the world around them quiet except for the sounds of nature. Maya realized how much she had missed these moments, the simplicity of being together, without the weight of their past hanging over them. The next morning, they took a long walk along a nearby trail, hand in hand. The forest was alive with birdsong, the path shaded by tall trees. Maya felt a sense of calm wash over her, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. As they walked, Victor stopped and turned to her, his expression serious. "Maya, I know things aren't perfect. I know there's still so much we need to work through. But I want you to know, with everything that's happened, I will never stop trying. I will never give up on us." Maya stopped, turning to face him. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet determination. She knew he meant it. She had spent so long questioning him, questioning their future, but in that moment, she realized that the possibility of building a new life with him was real. It was no longer just a dream. "I believe you," she said, her voice steady. "And I want to believe in us. I want to see what we can build together. Without the fear. Without the doubts." Victor smiled, his eyes shining with relief. "Then let's do it. Let's build it, one step at a time." As they walked back to the cabin, Maya felt the weight of the past slowly lift. The fear, the uncertainty, the doubt, they were all still there, lurking in the background. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face them. She was ready to take the next step, to embrace the future with Victor, and to build the family they both wanted. The summer had come to an end, and the crisp air of fall began to settle in. Maya sat at the kitchen table, sipping her morning coffee, watching the golden rays of sunlight filter through the window. The house, now a familiar space to them both, felt different, fuller, warmer. It had taken time, but the fear that had once been so prevalent in her heart was beginning to fade, replaced by a fragile hope for the future. Victor had been home more, working on his business from a small office in the corner of the house. He had found a balance, not just between his work and his role as a father, but between his past and his present. Maya had watched him closely over the months, noticing the small changes in him. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying to be the man he had promised to be. And, for the first time in a long time, Maya was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. Victor walked into the kitchen, his presence filling the room. He smiled at Maya, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Morning," he said softly, his voice warm, with a touch of exhaustion. Maya glanced up at him, offering a small smile in return. "Morning. How's work going?" she asked, gesturing to the paperwork scattered on the counter. Victor sat across from her, pushing a mug of coffee toward her. "It's moving forward. Slowly, but forward." He paused for a moment, looking down at the papers. "But I've been thinking, Maya. It's time we start talking about the next steps." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had learned to take things one day at a time, but hearing Victor talk about the future stirred a deep, unresolved anxiety in her chest. She set her coffee cup down and looked at him, her brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. Victor reached across the table, his hand gently brushing hers. "I know we've been taking things slow, and I respect that. But we've come a long way, Maya. We're not the same people we were a year ago. And I think it's time to start thinking about where we're going next, together." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Maya's chest tightened. She had wanted to move forward. She had wanted to build something solid, something that wasn't haunted by their past. But the thought of truly committing to a future together, without the fear of what might happen, felt like a leap she wasn't sure she was ready to take. "I don't know, Victor," Maya said, her voice soft. "It's hard to shake the fear. The fear of losing everything again. We've been through so much, and I'm still scared. I'm still scared that one day, I'll wake up and everything will fall apart." Victor's gaze softened, his thumb gently tracing the back of her hand. "I know. I'm scared too. But we can't keep living in fear. I can't promise that everything will be perfect, I can't promise that we won't face more challenges. But what I can promise is that I'll be here. I'll be here for you, for our child. I want to keep building this life with you, one day at a time." Maya looked at him, her eyes searching his face, trying to read the sincerity in his words. She had heard similar things from him before, and while she knew he was trying, the fear that still lingered in her heart held her back. The weight of their past, the betrayals, the doubts, still weighed on her shoulders. But as she looked at him now, she saw the man he had become, not perfect, but real. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe this time, they could get it right. "I'm willing to try," Maya said, her voice steady. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to take that step. I want to build a future with you, Victor. For our child. For us." Victor's face lit up, a mixture of relief and hope flooding his expression. He stood up, walking around the table to pull her into a gentle embrace. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for giving me this chance. I won't let you down." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Maya felt the weight of the decision lift, just a little. It wasn't going to be easy, and there were still doubts to work through, but for the first time, she felt a sense of clarity. They had both made mistakes. They had both hurt each other. But they were here, standing together, ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Maya and Victor began to make plans for their future. They discussed moving into a larger house, one that would give them more space to grow. They talked about building their family, setting goals for the future, and navigating the complexities of co-parenting. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And it was enough for them to take the next steps together. One afternoon, as they were sitting together in the living room, Maya looked over at Victor, a soft smile playing on her lips. "You know," she said quietly, "it's strange. For so long, I never thought I could trust you again. But here we are. And I'm starting to believe that we can make this work." Victor looked back at her, his smile matching hers. "We will, Maya. We're already doing it." As the days passed, Maya and Victor found themselves building something new, not just a life, but a partnership rooted in love, trust, and shared responsibility. It wasn't perfect. They still had their challenges, their doubts, their fears. But every day, they were learning how to navigate them together. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Maya knew one thing for sure: she was no longer walking it alone. As autumn gave way to the early whispers of winter, the world outside the window seemed to mirror the changes within. The first frost of the season had settled on the grass outside their home, and the air had turned crisp, but inside, there was warmth. Warmth from the fire crackling in the living room, warmth from the shared quiet moments between Maya and Victor, and warmth from the slow but steady growth of their family. The house, though still new in its transformation, felt like home now. Not the kind of home that came with perfectly placed furniture or flawless routines, but the kind that was built with effort, patience, and, most importantly, love. There was a rhythm to their life now, one that didn't come from perfection but from compromise, mutual understanding, and the willingness to learn and grow together. Maya stood in the kitchen one morning, preparing breakfast for their child, her mind focused on the simple task. She was grateful for this moment of peace. It had been a long time since she had allowed herself to truly enjoy the stillness of her life. After everything that had happened, the pain, the heartbreak, the uncertainty, she had learned to cherish the quiet moments. Victor entered the kitchen, his presence filling the room. He walked up behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders in a gentle gesture of affection. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice carrying the same warmth that had become so familiar to her. Maya smiled, glancing back at him. "Morning. I thought I'd make pancakes today. We could use a treat." Victor chuckled, the sound bringing a sense of ease to her heart. "I think that sounds perfect." As the days went by, Maya found herself allowing more and more of her walls to come down. The fear of repeating the past, of getting hurt again, had once consumed her. But she was beginning to see a different future, one where the scars of the past were acknowledged but didn't control her every decision. Victor had proven, in so many ways, that he was serious about making things work. It wasn't easy for either of them. They had to learn how to communicate without resorting to the old patterns of anger or avoidance. They had to learn how to trust, slowly and steadily, with each passing day. Victor had become not just a father to their child, but a partner in every sense of the word. He was there for the late-night feedings, the early morning wake-ups, and everything in between. He was present, not just physically, but emotionally, showing up in ways that Maya never thought possible. One night, after their child had gone to sleep, Victor and Maya sat on the couch, the soft glow of the lamps casting a warm light around the room. They were wrapped in the quiet comfort of the evening, and for the first time, Maya allowed herself to feel at ease. Victor turned to her, his face serious but gentle. "Maya," he began, his voice soft, "I know we've talked about the future, but I wanted to say it again, I'm here. I'm here, not just for you, but for us. I want to build a life with you, one that's steady and real." Maya met his gaze, her heart racing. The weight of his words settled into her chest, filling the spaces she hadn't realized were still empty. She took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want that too," she said, her hand reaching for his. "I've spent so long guarding myself, but I see you. I see you trying. And I want to believe in us. I want to trust that we can have this." Victor squeezed her hand, his thumb brushing over her skin in a gesture of reassurance. "We can, Maya. One step at a time. We've come so far, and we're still growing. We're still learning how to do this together." In the days that followed, Maya and Victor continued to build on the foundation they had begun to lay. The days weren't always easy. There were moments when the past resurfaced, moments of doubt, fear, and the old habits of distance and avoidance. But those moments became less frequent, and when they did arise, they were met with communication, patience, and a willingness to work through the discomfort. Maya started to take more time for herself, something she had neglected for so long. She reconnected with friends, took long walks in the park, and even started a journal, the one Victor had bought her. Writing became a way for her to process her thoughts and feelings, a safe space where she could reflect on how far she had come, how far they had come. Victor, too, was finding his way. The challenges of his business had not completely vanished, but he had learned to ask for help. He no longer felt the need to shoulder everything on his own. He had allowed himself to lean on Maya, to lean on their shared future, and it was making a difference. The couple spent more time discussing their dreams, dreams for their child, dreams for their family, and even dreams for their individual lives. They were no longer living in the shadow of their past mistakes. They were starting to build something new, together. One afternoon, as they sat together on the porch, watching the world outside, Maya turned to Victor, her eyes filled with a sense of calm she hadn't known in a long time. "You know," she said softly, "I've been thinking a lot about how far we've come. And I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd feel like this again, like we can have something lasting, something real." Victor smiled, his eyes reflecting the same sense of peace. "I never thought I'd get here either, Maya. But I'm glad we did. And I'm not going anywhere." Maya leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "I'm glad, too." The weeks turned into months, and with each passing day, Maya and Victor grew closer, stronger, and more confident in their ability to build a life together. There were still hurdles to overcome, moments of doubt, and challenges that would test them. But they had learned one crucial thing. They were in this together, and together they could face whatever the future held. One evening, as they tucked their child into bed, Victor turned to Maya, his face filled with quiet pride. "We've done good," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. "We've built something real. And I'm proud of us." Maya smiled, her heart full. "We have. And I'm proud of us, too." As they stood in the doorway, watching their child sleep peacefully in their crib, Maya realized that, for the first time in a long time, she could see a future without fear, without doubt. The road ahead was still long, but it was theirs to walk together. And for the first time, she believed that they could. After a year of rebuilding their lives, Maya and Victor found themselves at a crossroads. Their relationship, once fractured and full of uncertainty, was now beginning to resemble something solid and real. They had worked through their struggles, both as co-parents and as partners. Victor had not only made significant strides with his business, but had also shown consistent growth as a father and a partner. Maya, too, had evolved, no longer defined by the pain of the past, but by the choices she had made to move forward. The decision to take the next step was a mutual one. Maya and Victor decided to formally blend their lives, creating a home filled with trust, love, and stability. The house that once felt like a temporary arrangement now seemed like the foundation of a future they were ready to build. Maya and Victor discussed buying a larger home. This wasn't just about a bigger space. It was about creating an environment where their child could grow, learn, and feel the presence of both parents equally. They envisioned a life where they weren't just coexisting under one roof, but actively contributing to a shared future. As they toured houses together, each visit brought them closer. The excitement of selecting a home for their family was tempered by the realization that this step marked a new chapter, one that involved a deeper commitment to each other and their child. They found a house in a quiet neighborhood, one with ample space for their child to play and grow, but also enough room for them to breathe as individuals. In this process, Maya and Victor learned to lean on each other, making joint decisions about the space, the design, and the future. It was a collaborative effort, one that reflected how far they had come, how they were no longer individuals living separate lives but partners working toward the same goals. While things seemed to be falling into place, parenting was far from easy. Maya and Victor had learned to co-parent with respect, but as their child grew, new challenges emerged. There were moments of frustration, times when their differences resurfaced, and moments of doubt when they questioned if they were doing the right thing. Victor's work was still demanding, and Maya often found herself juggling the demands of her career and being a mother. They learned to share responsibilities more equitably, but the balancing act between their careers and home life sometimes felt like a struggle. Despite the challenges, they communicated openly about their needs and their frustrations, knowing that it was essential to maintain the foundation of their relationship. Victor had made it clear that he was committed to being a better man, a better partner, and a better father. And while Maya saw the effort, there were still moments when the ghosts of the past came back. She struggled with the remnants of old fears, fear that things would fall apart again, fear that trusting him fully would result in more pain. Maya had learned to process these fears by confronting them head-on. Therapy had been a crucial part of her healing process, both individually and as a couple. Victor had participated in counseling as well, understanding that the road to true healing required openness and self-awareness. In therapy, they explored the root of their issues, focusing not only on the betrayals but also on how to build a sustainable and healthy relationship. They learned to forgive, not just each other, but themselves. The healing process was slow and required patience, but it was necessary. Maya learned that healing didn't mean erasing the past but integrating it into their new life, understanding how it had shaped them but not allowing it to dictate their future. Victor's business had stabilized, and he had found a new sense of purpose. He was no longer driven solely by the need for success and wealth. Instead, his motivation was to build something sustainable, something that would provide for his family and allow him to spend more time with them. While there were still moments of pressure from his business dealings, Victor had learned to balance his work with his personal life. He made conscious decisions to be more present, setting boundaries around work hours and making sure he was there for his family when they needed him. The success of his recovery mirrored the success in his relationship with Maya. It was a reminder that the two were intrinsically linked. As Victor grew, so did his commitment to his family. Maya, too, had found a sense of fulfillment in her career, though her main priority remained her family. Together, they were learning how to create a life where both professional and personal fulfillment could coexist. As Maya and Victor continued to build their life together, they began to talk more about their dreams. They dreamed of expanding their family, of creating a legacy for their child, of traveling the world together, experiencing life's wonders as a family unit. Their dreams were no longer clouded by fear or doubt, but were rooted in the knowledge that they could face anything, as long as they were together. Maya's journal, which had once been filled with uncertainty and fear, now contained reflections of growth and gratitude. It had become a place of hope, a place where she could write down her dreams for the future, dreams that were no longer limited by her past but were shaped by the future she and Victor were now building. One evening, as Maya and Victor sat together in their living room, their child playing on the floor between them, they realized that the life they had built together was real, not just in the material sense, but in the emotional and psychological sense. They had come a long way from the days of conflict, hurt, and betrayal. Their journey was still unfolding, but they were no longer walking it alone. They were walking it together. Victor turned to Maya, his voice filled with sincerity. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Maya nodded, her eyes softening as she looked at him. "We have. And I'm proud of us. I never thought we'd get here. But I'm glad we did." Victor took her hand, his fingers gently curling around hers. "We're just getting started," he said with a smile. "There's so much more ahead for us." Maya smiled back, the weight of the past no longer holding her back. "Yes. And I'm ready for it. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate your time and support." If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave a meaningful comment below. Let us know your thoughts, and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It means a lot to us to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more amazing content like this. And to all our returning subscribers, thank you for your continued support. We couldn't do this without you. Stay tuned for more exciting videos coming your way, and we'll see you in the next one.